And now to my opening statement. This is the last straw. President Obama's response in both words and action to the beheading of American James Foley was so weak, wimpy, and pathetic that it's embarrassing. In times like these, great leaders understand both the enormity and the urgency of the situation. They take the reins and they lead. But not our president. He channels Teddy Roosevelt. But instead of speak softly and carry a big stick, it's speak softly and carry a big Bertha. But oh, he talks a big game.
We will be vigilant and we will be relentless. When people harm Americans anywhere, we do what's necessary to see that justice is done.
Relentless for at least 8 minutes until you get back onto the golf course on your 3-week vacation. Mr. President, where is your humanity? This innocent man and his family deserve better. British Prime Minister Cameron, at the sound of the killer's British accent, immediately left his vacation to get back to work. And reports are the Brits have already identified the leading suspect, and it wasn't even one of their own who was killed. Mr. President, Americans are justifiably outraged, and they wonder if you are disengaged, tired, overworked, bored, or just clueless. But then again, at this point, what difference does it make? What difference do you make? What difference can you make? There are no words to describe the horror, the savagery, the beheading of James Foley. The agony of his mom and dad, who for 2 years while ISIS held him hostage, fought to bring him home. We're the greatest country on earth. We're Americans. They'll bring him home. Yes, hope does spring eternal. And no words to describe the disappointment when nations far less powerful bring their hostages home, while the greatest, most powerful nation on earth does not. And there are no words to describe the anxiety, the panic, the loss of hope, the desperation, the moment ISIS emails how and when their son will die. No words to describe the finality, the animal hooded in black, in the process of decapitating an American, forced to his knees, his hands bound behind his back, and his head pulled back. And you, Mr. President, fist bump your friends on the golf course? While you vacation, an American hostage released today, having nothing to do with you or your administration, when criticized, in fact, that you hadn't done enough, you spill your guts and you blame the intelligence community yet again. We tried to get him back, but it just didn't work. Excuse me? Isn't that classified information? Haven't you indicted people for less under the Espionage Act? You not only burnt our sources, you put other American hostages in even more danger. And what's that? You don't pay ransoms? You don't negotiate with terrorists? Well, what the hell was the Bergdahl trade? Aside from replenishing the enemy in a time of war, you violated not one but 2 laws. And if you don't negotiate with terrorists, what was John Kerry doing with Hamas? And why were you negotiating with Iran on its nuclear proliferation? You just don't get it. Your own Pentagon, the guys who do this for a living, are frightened, worried, and confused. Those with access to classified information know that the danger is imminent.
They are one plane ticket away from U.S. shores, and that's why we're so concerned about it.
You're the one who called them a JV team. It seems you're the only one in Washington, or should I say Martha's Vineyard, who feels that way.
They're not the JV team anymore. They're the most prominent terrorist organization in the world, but they're not the only one. They're in competition with the other jihadist groups, and the gold medal will be awarded to the group that can hit America.
But you're not going to act without your favorite line, the international community standing alongside us. Mr. President, why do we need someone to stand alongside us? I didn't see anyone standing alongside James Foley. He was alone in that desert, his blood staining the sand. He was an American, our son. And you play golf. But hey, good news. You put Eric Holder in charge. Really? You want to prosecute these guys? Mr. President, you don't have a clue. This is an act of war. These are crimes against humanity. Why not just admit it? You don't want the job. You want the perks, the vacations. You want to play golf. You don't want the responsibility. You can't make a decision. You live in a fantasy world, colored with vanishing red lines and make-believe allies. Well, that just doesn't cut it with us anymore. Stop being a spectator and start being a leader. Stop waiting for evil to simply go away.
And people like this ultimately fail.
Wishing and hoping doesn't cut it. Hitler failed, but only after he killed 6 million. What is your goal? Do you even have one? If you do not have as your goal the destruction of ISIS, if you do not have the determination, the desire, and the stamina to destroy them, then you need to leave. And I'm not talking about vacation. You need to leave the White House. Remove yourself from the most powerful position on earth. You are putting Americans on the wrong side of history, risking everything that we've worked for. But if you do decide to stay, take a listen to what a real leader sounds like.
I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. You ask what is our policy? To wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalogue of human crime. What is our aim? Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. For without victory there is no survival.
And that's my open. With me now, Fox News military analyst, Colonel David Hunt. Colonel Hunt, good to have you in studio tonight. I mean, what do you think about a commander-in-chief? I mean, you were in the military for how many years?
30.
The commander-in-chief is your leader. This guy's playing golf and fist bumping. What is that message?
The problem you've got is that it was, besides the bad look, the bad optics, is that there's no strategy associated with what's going on. I mean, we've got a very, very real threat with ISIS, and all we're doing is bombing locally to help the Kurds. And we've got almost 1,000 special forces on the ground. So we're slipping into another war with Iraq without actually getting at it.
But what's interesting is that Ben Rhodes said the other day that, you know, that national boundaries are not going to define where we go, suggesting to me that maybe they're talking about going into Syria?
Yeah, and as we do that, we're about to support Assad, who's being supported by the Russians and the Iranians.
And Iran.
And then as we go into Iraq deeper, we're actually also going to be in the middle of Russia and Iran, who's on the ground in Iraq. Very complicated, very necessary. ISIS are bad people. I have no issue bombing them. The problem is we need to go into this with our eyes open. This will not be easy. And we've had 8 years in Iraq, lost a lot of people.
Well, you know, there's talk. I mean, we heard Mike Rogers and that they're coming here. Mm-hmm. We had people on the show last night who said they are already here. We've got a Brit who is the leading suspect in the beheading of James Foley. So when is the president going to start to have a strategy to protect the American people? What does he need to do?
What I've heard him saying in the speech was the preparations for war. That's what Dempsey, I thought, and I thought the Secretary of Hagel was also talking about. I think they're waiting for Congress to come back. But we are bombing 20 times a day. And as I've said, almost 1,000 special operations guys. Those are combat soldiers on the ground, and they carry a battle task force in the Gulf. So we're in the middle of a war.
You know, you said something interesting. You said that they're waiting for Congress to come back, and that conjures up in my mind the Syria thing. You know, we're in, we're out. I'm waiting for Congress. I mean, you know, maybe Congress will give me permission, maybe they won't.
Well, okay, we are doing it now. I mean, as I've said,
we've got 1,000 people on the ground, 1,000 men and women on the ground, combat.
Yeah, combat soldiers on the ground, special forces. We're bombing at least 20 times a day, and we've had the carrier group in the Gulf supporting it, and we're helping the Kurds. The issue now is how much deeper do you want to get into it, and do we actually want to get into Syria, or actually put large amount of forces on the ground? I think we're down the slippery slope. I actually think we've actually declared war.
Well, they certainly declared war on us when they killed an American like that.
Right, and yes, there's no question. It was, and they did it when they entered into Iraq. ISIS is virulent and awful. My issue is, we look at this with clear-eyed. This will not be simple, and this is going back into Iraq with a lot of guys.
In Iraq and Syria.
And Syria, which again, we go into Syria, we're supporting Assad.
We're supporting Assad, and then we're fighting with Iran, on the side of Iran, right, and Russia.
And Russia right now is controlling the airport in Baghdad because they have their own jets in there.
What do you mean, Russia? Russia's controlling the airport?
Absolutely, because...
In Baghdad?
Yes, because they've got Russian planes been coming in and out of there for a long time, and they've got fighters now and bombers in the middle of this, and the Russians have taken over part of the operation in the airport, as has Iran with their special operating forces and intelligence.
All right, you've been in the business a long time. Real quickly, what about Sotloff, the other American that they say will be killed soon? Do you have hope?
I think, like this guy was released today, I think there's going to be money paid backdoor. I don't think the administration will afford another American to lose his head.
But this guy today was held by al-Nusra, which is the front, which is different from ISIS.
True, but Qatar's saying there was no humanitarian aid. My bet is we had Qatar pay the money, we'll pay Qatar later. I don't think we're going to allow another American to be beheaded on world television. I think we're going to do everything to get him out.
Let's hope so. All right, Colonel David Hunt, thanks. And we're going to see you in the next hour. So coming up, James Foley, beheaded by ISIS. The president says we don't negotiate with terrorists. But what does he call the Bergdahl trade? Congressman Trent Franks weighs in next. Don't forget to vote in tonight's Insta poll. What should President Obama do to prevent ISIS from attacking us here in America? Facebook or tweet me at Judge Jeanine.